We need athletic trainers everywhere with our kids. We've got an episode that proves it. Good evening. Nice to have you along. I am Dan Yorke. Welcome to my State of Mind. Paul Yulucci is my guest, along with Tim Crandall tonight. Tim is the young man athletic trainer who was Johnny on the spot at East Greenwich High School recently when a young junior in high school during a volleyball practice fell ill, had a heart condition, and if not for Tim's presence, might not still be with us. And there's a bigger picture conversation that we need to have about this, and we shall get to that this evening. It is great to have you aboard. The last few nights we've had long-form programming. It's nice to be back and get after the rundown, so let us do that. Move right into it. Okay, one more time. We're going to take a look at the Superman building. There's a theme here, though, a really important theme. I'd say the people in Newport ought to take a second look. This time, a really careful, hard look. This is outrageous. You can't even count on the court system to do what they say they're going to do. And this is a crazy story this morning. We woke up to this horror show, and of course, it's a horror show for anybody else who wants to compete for a basketball championship when UConn is dominating the way they are. So those are just some of my thoughts tonight. Let's break them down on the rundown. Yeah, the Superman building again. Here's a headline in the Providence Journal today. Superman developer alters bid for state aid. This is about the iconic building, 111 Westminster Street. You know, it's empty right now. It's dark, and it sits as kind of, as a person on the radio said to me today, Dan Yorke, weekdays noon to 3 on WPRO, said it's kind of like a blackened tooth in a little one's mouth. I say if that building goes, it'll be a gaping hole in a little one's mouth. You know, like a 6-year-old who loses their first teeth. There's the building. If it's not there anymore, it'll be a psychological problem for the state. Now, there's a lot of people out there who say, oh, the heck with it. And there's no way that there ought to be any kind of state money that will come into this deal. And that the guy who bought it in 2008 for $33 million and poured another $6 million in, so he was into it for $40 million. If he can't make it work, well, then go to heck. Well, you know what? I think that's all part of the disease that we have, and I want to talk about that in a second. But here's kind of what he proposes this time. Last time, he was looking at $39 million in a fixed put. This was a year ago when he was talking about it. Now he's asking for $39 million from the state over 4 years, and still would like the pieces of Providence tax breaks and federal tax credits. But he's going to put $55 million of his own money in. And what happens here is the $39 million, I guess, becomes kind of like bridge financing. Or covers or protects bridge financing. They say that they're not going to look for any money from the state at all, put that $39 million in escrow until it's built, and there will be a guarantee through an insurance bond that there will be completion. Here is Bill Fisher, the spokesperson for High Rock Development, the owner of the building, on the radio with me today.
No taxpayer money until the building is complete. In addition to that, the owner will take out a completion bond to secure, through a bond, a guarantee in completion of this project.
Now, they want to put apartments in there, and, you know, 35,000 square feet of commerce downstairs, restaurants, bars, maybe, I don't know, athletic facilities, you know, gym, that kind of thing. I don't know what they're going to do. And I don't know if the plan is feasible, but I know this. The hue and cry that came on my phone lines today from a majority of the listeners, we're not putting any taxpayer money in this, we're mad as hell, we're not screw the guy, blah, 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 blah. That all comes from what is a breakdown in trust with our government. Because of 38 Studios, because of everything that's happened, because the new House Speaker, Nick Mattiello, doesn't even recognize that there's a perception problem about corruption, because there's no cleansing, because there's no good government enema, because there's no ethics commission opportunity here to revisit and have us to get a vote on the ethics commission, because there's no master lever, because there's no government oversight panel that's actually really working hard. There's semblances of it, but no real oversight panel. Because of all of that, the trust of the Rhode Island public for anything that is government and thus government financed is at an all-time low. I ask you this. For those of you who think that a formula to raise that building back into any kind of good stead with another $55 million of private investment and private funding, if there were no 38 Studios debacle, would you be so angry about it? Probably not. So what's important here is the House Speaker better get it through his occasionally, excuse my French and all due respect, thick head, that if he doesn't create a cleansing environment first, he's got no economic development chance. He should spend the balance of this session working on good behavior in the legislature, and the economic ideas will come. In the meantime, let me say this. If we don't help this project out a little bit, here's what we're going to have. A parking lot. Because that's all anybody will be able to afford. There's no private investor that'll make that thing work all by itself. Next item. This is kind of interesting. So Joe Paolino just bought a $60 million building downtown, and now he's part of a group that's taking a look at Newport Grand. Here was the projo.com. Yeah, Joe Paolino, he's everywhere. He's everywhere. You know Newport Grand. You drive over the bridge and you see the word slots. Not very impressive. I think we've got some B-roll on that. I may have jumped the gun a little bit there, but you know what? Thank you, Rox. It's not a very impressive facility. What Joe Paolino is saying is, hey, look, you know what? Even though they turned down table games in a local referendum vote in Newport, he'd like to put table games in with a nicer looking facility, both outside and in. Here's what he said on the radio to the newsroom today at WPRO.
We don't want these Las Vegas companies coming in, neon signs everywhere, making Newport look terrible. We want to have some taste and let it be quaint and let it be successful.
Let me tell you this. If he's got a group of investors that want to take a stab at gaming in Newport amidst all the rumor about Fall River and Massachusetts and what they're going to do down there, not rumor, but tentative plans, power to them. You folks in Newport, take a closer look at this and don't get hung up on table games. That facility is important to your local economy. It's not the best economic engine, of course, gaming, but if they want to touch it up and they've got the guts to do it, let it ride, baby. That's a game, right? Let it ride. Next item. This is incredible. Changing the deal is exactly what's happening, and it's happening in the courts. The headline reads, Chafee optimistic about settlement. This is the pension deal. This is the reform that happened in 2011 that has been the subject of a lawsuit by the unions charging that it was not constitutional, that the state actually changed the numbers back in 2011, right? So, over 18 months, they've been messing around with this in the back room of the judge's office, trying to get everybody together. They finally announced the settlement rules. They changed the numbers in the settlement, but it's got to be ratified by the rank and file, at least those who were in camera, so to speak. 6 separate unions had to vote, and all 6 had to approve. And of course, the vote was corrupt because one of those ballots that the only way you can vote no is to send the ballot in, but if you don't send the ballot in, you're voting yes. So all that's going on, right? Well, the police union, the smallest of the 6 unions, silos, if you will, negotiating this thing, voted no. They all sent back, 247 police officers sent it back no. Well, those were the rules. Now they're back in settlement conversations, and there's rumors they may want to extract the police from the entire settlement. If you can't trust judicial settlements and judges, you can't trust anybody. And with guys like this on the side of the state, he's our governor, we're sunk. Here he is.
I just want to avoid the long protracted litigation, obviously with high lawyers' fees, and then the uncertainty of not knowing what the outcome might be, devastating for the taxpayers if it's adverse in the court. So I've always thought get into mediation, and we're so close right now, as you saw by some of the margins of the votes.
Yeah, the margins of the votes were you know, in large part, yes, but the rules were each union had to vote yes or no, up and down. One voted no, game, set, match. Gina Raimondo, our state treasurer, who was the champion of this in 2011, needs to step up, tell the judge, you know what, enough of this. We're not party to any more settlements. Bring the trial on, move it up from September 15th to May 15th, and let's go. End of story. If you can't trust the courts to do what they say they're going to do, who can you trust? All right. Let me just check this out here. This was incredible. New York Daily News headline after this concept of wreaking havoc, because that's what this kid did. What was going on here? The doctor talking about all the patients that were traumatized by this knife-wielding young man today.
They were all knife wounds. Most of them were to the lower abdomen, and they seemed to actually almost have a pattern. Most of them were to the right lower abdomen and the right flank. And that created some of the criticality of their wounds and the nature of their injuries. 2 of them have relatively severe injuries to their abdominal organs and are undergoing, like I said, are undergoing surgery right now. Another one has injuries to the upper abdomen, also being operated, but relatively stable.
You know, all of these injuries are traumatic, right? You know, so I'm in the gym today, and one guy says to me, he says, it sounds a lot like The Following, you know, the show that's on Fox? I've never seen The Following, so I can't comment. Rox has, but I'm not getting into that debate with her. Here's the thing. You like that show, right? Here's the thing. You know what? I'm not one of these people that immediately goes to the violence on television being the cause for everything. But there's a lot of violence on television. That might be the cause of some things. And we really need to evaluate that, don't we? At some juncture. I mean, don't you just watch some shows and say, why am I watching this? Just saying. And finally, I watched this Monday night and Tuesday night. Unbelievable. There's the respective headlines for both the men and women championships at UConn. Holy cow. First of all, can you imagine playing basketball in front of 75,000 people in North Texas at that stadium? At the AT&T Stadium, whatever Jerry built there. I don't even know how you get perspective on a basket from 15 feet when it's in the middle of that zoo. But UConn certainly did. You know what's amazing about UConn basketball in general? Going into last night, UConn had never lost on the men's side in a championship game. They're 4-0. And now, 8-0 last night with the women, 9-0 with last night's performance with Gino Ariana. Let me ask you a question. First of all, the kids are crazy. I mean, that they tore up the place on Monday night is disgusting. But it's not going to prevent other crazy kids from wanting to go to UConn, which, by the way, academically is a very good school. Business is going to be good. How can it not be? Congratulations to those 2 programs. When we come back, speaking of athletics and athletic training, it's a must, and we don't have enough of it here in Rhode Island. We'll tell you why. Stay with us. Welcome back in. Here is a headline from East Greenwich Patch, I believe, a little while back, a couple weeks ago. This is just awful, but you know what? This is really good. When a young person goes down, you know, athletically, we think, oh my gosh, you know, how tragic, and oftentimes, unfortunately, it just ends up being a sad story all the way around. Paul Iulici is here with Tim Crandall. They are both Iulici Sports Medicine Physical Therapy. All disclosure, Paul and I have been friends and in business. We've done business together for a long time, and he's been arguing that we need more and more and more athletic training presence in the high schools.
Absolutely,
right?
Absolutely.
And Tim has been, you know, working as a subcontractor for you. Actually, you
Yes.
have the contract for East Greenwich High School,
Right.
right?
Tim's a full-time employee with our business, and he provides athletic training services to East Greenwich High School. He's been doing it now for a number of years. 6
Yeah,
years.
6. So, is it appropriate to say congratulations? I don't know. When you save somebody, I think of all thank God you were there, and congratulations that your training
Right.
bore fruit here, right?
Absolutely.
First time you had that kind of a trauma with a kid going down with a potentially fatal problem?
Not an athlete. I've had it before with a referee. So this
Really?
is actually the second time in an athletic training setting that I've had this type of event happen.
Did the referee thing go okay?
Yeah.
So you're 2 for 2. No. Hey, you know, you try to make a little light of it, but I'm sure. Give me the short scope. What happened with the young man? We don't want to violate his privacy, and we won't name him. But what happened?
He was at practice. It was the very beginning of practice, and I was called into the gym. Immediately, I was able to recognize that
Volleyball player, right?
volleyball player, that this was a very, very serious event that needed immediate critical care. So we were fortunate enough to have everything in place and at the ready. So he had the best care he could possibly get within 2 minutes.
What'd you do?
We got our AED, started doing CPR, was doing respirations for him. So we really did everything we possibly could have done.
You used the
immediately.
defibrillator?
Correct.
And that kind of thing. And so far, so good. I mean, we're not here to diagnose the young man, but he's doing better.
He's
in the
recovering.
hospital,
Recovering, absolutely.
And is it one of these things where he's got some kind of a family heart thing going on or something like that?
Yeah, after the event, we found out that it was a hereditary issue is what they suspect.
Because it's horrifying, and not something that you can even compute when a 16, 17-year-old kid goes down with a heart condition, right?
Yeah, it's hard to imagine something so dramatic happening to someone of such a young age, and being prepared for it is the absolute key. And Tim, with the training that he's had and his unfortunate experience of doing this twice now as an athletic trainer, it's amazing that we had everything in place. We had an athletic trainer with the skills and knowledge to do CPR, to recognize the emergency, to apply the AED, to shock the young man 3 times while in the gym, literally keeping him alive until he could be transported to the emergency room. I mean, that's the ideal situation that we're talking about.
You know, I remember when I was a lifeguard, and I don't mean to match stories because they don't really, it's amazing. As a kid, I made a bunch of pulls and saves, and I remember afterwards thinking, I can't believe I just did that. Whatever limited training as a lifeguard I had just kind of kicked in. It doesn't even come close to what it is that you had to do, but afterwards you kind of think, holy cow, I just did what I was trained to do, and then can't believe I had to do that.
In the moment, you're very much relying on your training. It's instinctual.
No panic.
You just
bang, bang, bang.
do what you need to do at the moment, and then after it sets in afterwards, that's when it catches up to you. How big of an event that was.
Yeah, no doubt. Listen, well, here's the thing. We take too much for granted on the athletic fields, and when we come back, we'll talk to Paul about that, because he's been battling this. He's got business at Barrington and Portsmouth and Brown and East Greenwich, but it's not about his business. It's about kids. Stay with us. Timothy Crandall to my left, your right, Paul Iullucci on the other side here, talking about athletic training. Tim was on the spot with a young man in East Greenwich who, not good, prayers, hopefully will do well in recovering from a cardiac situation that he had at volleyball practice, and we just spent time talking about how heroic and responsive he was. But the big picture here is that while you have contracts with certain school districts,
Right.
East Greenwich,
Barrington, Mount Hope, Portsmouth High School, Brown University, and Providence College.
Well, the colleges are one thing, but the high schools, they're making their own budgetary decisions that it's
Absolutely.
important for you to be there.
Right.
Are other schools employing other physical therapy operations?
Most of the private schools do have an athletic trainer on site. Many of the public schools, and the vast majority of the public schools in Rhode Island, have absolutely no medical personnel, no medical coverage at all once the school day ends and the athletic season or athletic day begins.
It's uncanny. It's unbelievable, Paul.
Well,
Unbelievable.
It's crazy, Dan, that we would actually let our kids compete in a sports, whether it's a collision sport or volleyball, for instance, and not provide them with the basics of medical training, medical personnel that have the training to take care of them. Tim was there. What would have happened to this young man if someone with that training wasn't there to immediately recognized that this kid needed an AED, immediately recognized that he needed to begin CPR. And another thing, Tim and I had a conversation off air. This gentleman had some agonal breathing, which if you're not trained to recognize that breathing sound that this gentleman's making.
What is that, Tim? What is that?
It's reflexive respirations. They're not productive in passing air. He's not really exchanging the air he needs.
If you don't know, it sounds like he's breathing like gasping, but he's not. And that's where the training, the education of an athletic trainer
I think most parents are horrified when it's brought to their attention. They may take it for granted that they're dropping their kids off for high school practice, junior high school practice, whatever. You've been fighting for state legislative action on this forever, and now you're working on the federal level.
Correct.
What progress are you making here?
Well, we had some great progress here in Rhode Island. H.R. 72, which is a House resolution, non-binding, and in fact it has no financial cost associated with it. H.R. 72 is something that's being promoted by the Youth Sports Safety Alliance and the National Athletic Trainers Association.
Federally?
Federally. Congressman Cicilline and Congressman Langevin both signed on to this national bill. Huge thing for us here in Rhode Island.
What's
to
it
have
say?
that.
What's it do?
It's a youth sports safety athletes bill of rights. So it gives the student athlete what we expect them to have, the basic rights, things like an AED, someone who's trained to use an AED.
AED is, again?
Automatic external defibrillator. So the thing that actually starts your heart up or slows it down in certain cases if it's acting too fast. So that's one thing. Pre-participation physicals to spot potential problems, an emergency action plan. Tim's working on something right now through the National Athletic Trainers Association to get his school the Safe School Sports Award. So he's got all of these plans Tim has an emergency action plan. Tim has a plan in place.
Okay, so the
Most
federal
schools
thing
don't
is a
have it.
suggestion more than
It's a suggestion.
mandate?
It's a suggestion.
It's a conversation starter.
Right.
All right, but what about state law here in Rhode Island to mandate?
The only state law really specifically dealing with athletes in Rhode Island has got to do with concussions, and it's a decent law, but it certainly could be fine-tuned.
What about Mass? Mass has a better
Mass
law?
has a much better concussion law at the moment than Rhode Island
But
does.
they don't
frankly,
mandate that the athletic trainers be on the field with or in the proximity of extracurricular
Depends
sports?
on the sport. Rhode Island has some recommendations as far as having an athletic trainer or an EMT or a physician on the sidelines during football. But again, this is a perfect example. There is no mandate in either Rhode Island or Mass that says you must have an athletic trainer
Because
during
what?
volleyball.
It's too much money?
Well, I mean, is it too much money? What would happen if Tim wasn't there? Could you imagine?
We're going to spend some more time. I'm going to have Paul back to talk about this at length in the next few weeks when we have a chance. But here's the thing. You should get your legislator and let him know that it's ridiculous that we don't have enough athletic training on our courts and our fields for our young kids. If Tim's not in East Greenwich, it may have gone the wrong way, right? It would have gone the wrong way, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Final word.
We need more athletic trainers providing services, protecting our kids here in Rhode Island every day during every sporting event.
Amen. Your State of Mind. We come back. Stay with us. Your State of Mind. This is how you get in touch with us. Just simply give us a call at 228-1886 or email me at stateofmind@myrat.com or just a Facebook post or tweet at me. And here's a reaction to Dr. Skip last night.
I never realized that they didn't know that they were alcoholics, and they felt they were somehow away from this, and that they were fine, that they had no problem. And it's interesting to see a doctor who recognizes his problems.
That's the book from last night. Check it out. Got to go. See you on the radio at noon tomorrow and here at 7:30. Bye.